2, 3, 4.
Rev up your engines!
Well, here's some good news. Volkswagen is gradually starting their production in Europe starting April 20th. Well, today's April 20th when I'm filming this, so it'll be the plants in Zwickau, Germany, and Bratislava, Slovakia. And then the plants in Spain, Russia, Portugal, and the U.S. are going to follow a week later on April 27th. And that includes the plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So it looks like Volkswagen's trying to start up production and starting the economy rolling in Europe now. It's one of the early ones that's going to resume production. People are going to watch it, see what happens. Maybe it can start the reopening of the world economy here. Now, Volkswagen says they realize they're not going to get the full production right away, and it's certainly going to make their 2020 figures be way down from the forecast, but hey, the whole world's going to be dealing with that stuff. At least they're starting it up, and let's hope that it works out well for Volkswagen so the rest of the world can open up. Keegan 1998 says, my 2000 Toyota Camry XLE V6 seems to be running through a lot more gas than it should. Any ideas? Well, always start simple and work your way up. Check the spark plugs. Maybe they're just flat and worn out. Time for new spark plugs. Check the air filter. Change it if it's dirty. That'll clog up. You get bad gas mileage. Past that, it is an old car. You might watch my video, how to clean fuel injectors without removal. Pay a mechanic like me with the pressure cleaning machine to clean your fuel injectors, because as they age, the pinholes, which have tiny little holes in the injectors and spray the gas, they're supposed to spray a perfect conical shaped spray. As they age and get a little dirty and clogged up, they start spraying kind of randomly, and it doesn't work as well. Sometimes a good, serious cleaning on a car that's 20 years old with a pressure tester can help that quite a bit. Taha says, what do you think of shocks and struts spacers putting on cars? Well, one word, don't. Don't do it. You know, those are rigging things. The springs are designed to compress. They have a certain thickness, certain length, certain strength of steel. Engineers design that stuff. You start putting spacers and stuff to try to make them sit higher or ride a little stiffer. That's just poor way to rig a car. You know, I mean, some kids will do it. They don't have any money. They want their car to ride tighter. You know, it's a cheap way of doing something, but you know, the spacers will break, fall out. Really, it was designed by engineers. If they're worn out or if you want a tighter one, get a tighter spring. Don't start putting these rig things on them. It's like the guys that put the wheel spacers to get bigger wheels on the car to make them stick out further to fit them on. They weren't designed for that. They could fall off. They could be dangerous. Stay away from those cheap modifications. It's dangerous and it ruins the design of the car. It's made for a certain geometry and you start messing with that geometry. I mean, are you an engineer? You know? And the guys that build that stuff, most of it's made in China. They have no idea. They just make them and sell them. Indianapolis 87 says, Scotty, my wife recently acquired a 2009 Saturn Vue V6 3.6 with 155,000 miles. It runs good, but when you drive it a long time, the transmission jumps. When you accelerate and cruise, it has no issues going in reverse. I have a scan tool. I get these codes. P0752, P0872, P0877, P0989. What do you think the problem is? The transmission wave plate or the transmission solenoid? It might actually be both. You'd want a mechanic like myself with bidirectional scan tool to road test it and do some testing. That's a Saturn Vue. It's 11 years old and has 155,000 miles. Those had weak transmissions. That's one of the reasons the Saturn went out of business. They had some of the worst automatic transmissions on the planet. Typical GM engineering. You know, GM made them. They call them Saturns, but it's like Toyota and Lexus. Only Toyota is good and Lexus is good. Well, GM and Saturn, both of them weren't that good. They weren't the greatest transmissions. Swear not. If you don't fully rebuild it and you try to nitpick and fix it with little things like that, if you want to gamble with it, go right ahead. But me, I just drive the stupid thing, because eventually it's going to break and it's not even going to drive at all, and then you would just junk the car. Hopefully you didn't pay much for it, because that's one of the cars that led to the end of Saturn, the Saturn Vues. And since they're not made anymore, that's telling you they weren't that well made. You don't want to put a bunch of money into it. But like I said, if you want to gamble with those parts, if you're going to do it yourself, give it a try, see what happens. But don't put a bunch of money in it, because the car is basically worthless where it stands today. A manufacturer that doesn't exist anymore in a vehicle that had a bad transmission in the first place. RF55 says, Scotty, my 07 RAV4 V6 steering makes a clicking noise when I turn. Not always, but sometimes. 292,000 kilometers on it. They say it might be my intermediate steering shaft. Wanted to see if you know about it. It's pretty easy to check. You got your steering wheel, the column, then there's an intermediate shaft that goes to the power steering rack. All you got to do is, with it on the ground, have somebody grab the steering wheel and turn it back and forth. and if there's play, follow it down. You see the intermediate shaft, there's a plastic cover, take the cover off, and it's got like a universal joint. And if you see it going clunk, 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 it's worn. It should have no play at all. Now, the only other thing that really clicks are worn CV joints. On the outside, you got a CV joint, end of each axle, on the inside of the wheel, on the end of the axle joint. And if the boot's ripped and the grease is leaking out, that's going to click because it's worn out. Now, if it's clicking, you have to replace it. Nowadays, especially with the Toyota, you can buy a whole brand new aftermarket axle for less than $100. So you don't fix them. You just throw them away, put a whole axle assembly on. Well, if you remember me talking a while back how Volvo says they're really only make hybrid and electric cars, well, Volvo is saying that the pandemic is not going to slow down their process of electrifying cars. Their goal is to put 1 million electrified cars on the road by 2025 that Volvo's making themselves. They say that their plan is to have their entire fleet of cars that they're selling to be either hybrid or fully electric cars by 2025. That's all they say they're going to be making. To quote Volvo, "We will not compromise on our electrification strategy." To me, I think that's a smart move on Volvo's behalf because their cars, they were great cars a long time ago, and they had a lot of problems over the past few decades. That's why the Chinese own them now. They bought them out. Why not do something radical? Now, there's so much competition in the gasoline cars, and they haven't fared all that well in that. Why not go to a different format? See how that works out. Volvo was always somewhat a niche manufacturer. They weren't super popular, billions of cars sold. They were always a niche car. When I was young, my aunt had one. She was kind of a hippy-dippy person. She had a P1800. They were kind of hippy-dippy cars, and the Swedes liked them, but they weren't giant, massive sellers. They're looking at electrification to change their whole brand image, to say that we're making mass-produced electric cars. We're going to sell a whole bunch of them, versus being more of a niche manufacturer. Look at Saab. Saab was a niche manufacturer. It's a very niche car, and they're bankrupt, and they're long gone now. Strangely enough, the Chinese were buying Saab, but there was some deal that the family didn't want to use their family crest, that Griffin thing on the Saab, so the whole deal fell through, and then the Chinese bought Volvo instead. I guess they were infatuated with Swedish stuff. Now, here's something that can make a machine go fast. The Australians are working on a small 1,340 horsepower electric motor. They're thinking might drive the Hyperloop. You know anything about Elon and his tubes of going to San Francisco to LA in 30 minutes and these things that can go super fast? Well, Australians have actually built a motor. It's only 18 inches across, a few inches thick. Technically, it's called the QFM 360X, and it puts out 1,340 horsepower. You might wonder why such an odd thing. Well, because it's electronic, and that is equal to 1 megawatt of power. Electricity works a little different, but you can convert it to horsepower. Now, they call it their Mighty Mouse engine, and being Australians, I've met quite a few, they decided to put it in a dragster, and they're putting 4 of these things in this dragster, so it has a total of over 5,000 horsepower. Now, you think you have speed if you've got a Dodge Challenger Hellcat goes 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Well, this thing goes 0 to 320 miles an hour in 3.7 seconds. A little bit faster. Now, everybody knows electric motors, they got instant power all the time. Where they go. Now, I'm imagining this dragster's got some serious batteries in it, and of course, it's only going 1/4 of a mile. It's not going that far, so you want a vehicle with a lot of horsepower and you're driving 1/4 of a mile, I guess it's okay for that, but they're just proving that you can get a small electric motor and put out a ton of power. So, thumbs up to you Aussies to see how fast you can go one of these little bitty electric motors. Well, actually 4 of them hooked up to a dragster. Shirley Jones 36 says, I got an '07 Honda Odyssey V6. The warning light came on and it says check fuel cap. Okay. You know, that's a generic code. You go and you look there and it's got the cap. I mean, if you left the cap off, sure, it's going to say that, right? You might have a bad gas cap. What the heck? Go buy one at AutoZone or something and screw it on, because if the seal's gone, it can do that. But all it's basically telling you is that there's a leak somewhere in the evap system. The computer thinks it might be somebody left the gas cap off or the gas cap's leaking. You can have an evap canister vent valve leak. You can have a line come off. A whole bunch of of stuff can do it. It's a 13-year-old Honda. Like I say, a lot of times it's just the cap is worn. You turn it until it clicks, and then it's set. Now, if you do that and it keeps that code on, that either means that the gas cap is internally broken and it's sucking too much air, or the little rubber seal on it often wears out and it's not sealing anymore. So just put another cap on. Now, if that doesn't fix it, it's time to see a mechanic, because their complicated evap system, I have to use a scan tool and do bidirectional testing, have a smoke machine to check for leaks in the system, but a lot of times it's just the cap. Try the cap first.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.